The anomaly appeared at 2:37 a.m. over the Ionian Sea, and Elon Musk hadn't slept for almost 36 hours. That wasn't unusual. What was unusual was the patch of electromagnetic disturbance showing up on the Starlink dashboard again. Same coordinates, same pulsing frequency, same shape, almost like a bruise on the blue skin of the Earth. It hovered like a lazy whirlpool, invisible to the naked eye but stubbornly present in every satellite pass. He narrowed his eyes at the screen, which reflected off his glasses like some cyberpunk prophecy. "It's back," he mumbled to himself, chewing on a stale piece of licorice he'd stolen from SpaceX engineer's desk 3 days earlier. He swiveled around and shouted, "Hey, someone reboot the quantum band alignment processor." A sleepy intern poked her head into the room. We don't have a quantum band alignment processor." Elon blinked. "Oh, well, we should. Put it on the list." The command center smelled like caffeine, PVC, and ambition. Half the team was dozing at their desks. The other half pretended not to notice the CEO pacing barefoot across the cold concrete floor. Most had grown used to his random 3 a.m. bursts of genius or madness. Tonight, the two felt particularly entangled. He walked up to the primary Starlink diagnostics panel, tapped a few keys, and brought up the log. The anomaly had been appearing for the last 87 nights. Always in the same spot. Always lasting 4 minutes and 12 seconds. No known weather patterns. No geological disturbances. No tectonic activity. Just a persistent electromagnetic blip that looked suspiciously like a fingerprint smudged across the sea. Elon leaned closer. "It's not a glitch. It's something." Someone behind him coughed gently. Could be a reflection off a submerged metal deposit. A shipwreck, maybe? Elon shook his head. No. Too symmetrical. Too polite. Polite. The intern asked. "It shows up, says hi, and leaves. Doesn't interrupt anything. Doesn't spike radiation levels. It's like it wants to be noticed, but not too noticed. Like me at awkward cocktail parties." The room stayed silent. Elon didn't expect laughs, but he appreciated a chuckle. Nothing. Tough crowd. He expanded the heat signature overlay. Still nothing. No temperature shift. No sonar activity. Just that thing, a digital ghost haunting his satellite array. Maybe it was space junk, or interference from a rogue transponder, or a practical joke by the folks over at Blue Origin. But Elon wasn't convinced. He had a nose for anomalies, and this one smelled ancient. "Okay, reroute the data to Deep Signal 3, cross-analyze with oceanographic sonar maps, and check for harmonic resonance patterns," he ordered. The intern blinked. "Are we looking for aliens again?" "No," he replied. "We're looking for lost cities." That got a few raised eyebrows. Elon walked over to a whiteboard, grabbed a marker, and scrawled the stain in the SEA in big, dramatic letters. Then he circled it and added a question mark. Something's down there, and it's been trying to get our attention without tripping any alarms. You're saying it's intelligent. I'm saying it's persistent, which is usually the same thing. The team exchanged skeptical looks. They'd seen this before, Elon chasing odd blips, whispering theories about Martian microbes or lunar relics left behind by pre-human civilizations. Most turned out to be nothing. But every now and then, well, there was that incident with the Antarctic cavity in 2021. No one talked about that anymore. "Pull me up the bathymetric data," he said, "and someone get me a 3D model of the seafloor in that area." A minute later, the screen displayed a topographical map of the Ionian Basin. The spot in question, latitude 36.4 degrees north, longitude 21.1 degrees east, sat in a curious depression, almost like a crater, but with unnatural edges. Elon zoomed in. The contours were weirdly geometric, circular, like a wheel had been pressed into the seafloor. He stared at it, then whispered under his breath, "Atlantis?" He didn't mean for anyone to hear it, but of course they did. "Did you say Atlantis?" The intern asked, half joking, half alarmed. Elon spun around. "I'm not saying it is Atlantis. I'm just saying it's in the right neighborhood." The team burst into nervous laughter. Elon smiled. Humor was always good bait for curiosity. But seriously, he continued, we've mapped more of Mars than we have of our own oceans. We've got satellites, drones, sonar arrays, and yet this thing has been dancing under our noses for almost 3 months and no one noticed. That's either a spectacular coincidence or... He trailed off and pointed at the map. Or that. A long pause filled the room. Then suddenly Elon clapped his hands. All right, decision made. We're sending a team. Pack up the Aqua Sub, the Deep ROV, and tell Guillermo we're naming the submersible Aquamos Prime. Oh, and I want everything filmed in 8K. No more blurry Bigfoot footage. If we're gonna find Atlantis, we're gonna do it with style. Wait, someone stammered. We're seriously mounting an expedition? Based on a digital smudge? Yes, Elon replied, but also because I'm bored. And because if that's really a lost civilization down there, I'd rather find it before someone like Jeff does and turns it into a floating casino. There was an awkward silence. I mean, you were joking about Atlantis, right? Elon smiled. That's the thing about jokes. Sometimes they're the truth in disguise. He turned back to the screen, the stain on the sea pulsing steadily, unmoving, unwavering, unknown, like a heartbeat buried beneath the waves. And somewhere, not far from the coast of Greece, something ancient waited. Not asleep, not awake, just watching. It didn't take Elon long to assemble a team. He treated it the same way he picked people for Tesla's earliest engineering trials, find the smartest, strangest individuals with the least regard for protocol and the most unreasonable belief in the impossible. First on the list was Dr. Lena Ortiz, an underwater archaeologist who once discovered a Roman amphora wedged inside a modern shipwreck off the coast of Crete and insisted it was placed there intentionally, as if the past was leaving breadcrumbs. She was brilliant, blunt, and allergic to convention. If it's just a shipwreck, she warned Elon, I'll make you wear a toga and apologize to Poseidon Live on TikTok. He accepted the risk. Then came James J.D. Delgado, a deep-sea diver with over 3,000 log dives and a fear of jellyfish, but not underwater volcanoes. His nickname around the Mediterranean ports was O Submarino, mostly because he never turned down a dive, regardless of depth, legality, or weirdness. Lastly, there was Jorge Pontes, a Brazilian influencer with 2 million followers on MythTube, a platform dedicated entirely to historical conspiracies, ancient tech, and the occasional pyramid-shaped potato. Jorge had once claimed the Bermuda Triangle was actually a defense mechanism created by time-traveling dolphins. Elon, reviewing his channel at 2 a.m., simply said, "This guy's nuts. I like him." Within 48 hours, the group stood aboard a sleek, solar-powered research vessel named EOS-2, floating over the exact coordinates of the anomaly. The sea was unnaturally calm, as if it, too, were holding its breath. Lena leaned over the rail and whispered, "It's too quiet. Mediterranean's never this still." Jorge was already filming himself against the backdrop of the open water, dramatically narrating, "We stand on the edge of a secret buried by time and possibly aliens we'll see." Elon chuckled. Let's just hope it's not Atlantis-themed tourist trash. Below the surface, drones were deployed first. The Aquamos Prime, an autonomous deep-sea rover designed in-house at Tesla Submarine Randi, a department that Elon had technically invented the day before, descended with smooth precision. It carried 4K cameras, sonar mapping, a robotic arm, and a tiny bumper sticker on its back that read "I brake for Leviathans." At 150 meters, the murk cleared and the feed sharpened. Everyone in the control room on the ship leaned forward as the monitor displayed the seafloor, and then something impossible. "Pause feed," Lena said, almost breathless. The screen froze on what appeared to be a section of carved stone, heavily eroded but unmistakably geometric, 2 vertical columns rising from the seabed, connected by a broken lintel. It was unmistakably artificial. Elon blinked. "We're not crazy." "I wouldn't go that far," Lena replied, "but you might be right." As the rover moved deeper into sight, more structures appeared, some fallen, others still standing, partially buried under centuries of sediment. Patterns could be seen, engraved symbols, spirals, and blocky writing that didn't match any known alphabet at first glance. One slab appeared to be a podium or altar, with marks along its edge that caught the light in rhythmic intervals. "Zoom in here," Jorge said, his camera now forgotten. That's not Roman. That's way older." Lena squinted at the screen. "These aren't just symbols. They're phonetic. That's Proto-Greek, maybe even earlier." And then the drone panned to a long, horizontal slab, cracked, moss-covered, yet eerily intact. The camera moved closer, and there, carved deeply into the stone, was a single word, flanked by decorative vines. "Atlas." Lena leaned closer, her voice barely a whisper. "Atlas." The room went dead silent. Elon turned slowly to face the camera Jorge had left recording. He grinned and pointed at the screen. "You're watching this unfold live. This might be the most important archaeological find of the 21st century, and you're seeing it first. If you're not subscribed yet, now's a good time. Because what we just found might change everything we thought we knew about human history. And trust me, you won't want to miss what comes next." A short pause. Then Elon added, "Also, someone please remind me to send a fruit basket to Plato." Back on screen, the word glowed faintly under the rover's headlights. It wasn't just a name. It was a marker, a whisper from the deep, a confirmation that myth sometimes wasn't fiction, it was memory. Lena was already on her tablet, cross-referencing inscriptions. Atlas wasn't just a titan in myth. The name comes from a lineage of knowledge bearers. Guardians. This might have been a temple. Or a vault. A vault of what? JD asked from the corner. She didn't answer. Instead, she played back a section of the sonar data from the earlier scan. Below the stone ruins, deeper than the visible architecture, was a mass of unusual density. Large, circular, and unlike any rock formation she'd ever seen. "Something's beneath the ruins," she said slowly. "It's buried, or hidden." Elon tilted his head, like an inner sanctum, or a container. The sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting a golden hue over the endless water. The Mediterranean had swallowed secrets for millennia. Tonight, it had burped up a glimpse of something far older than anyone expected. On deck, Jorge recorded one final segment before sunset. "This is real. This is happening. Somewhere down there, maybe 1,000 years before the pyramids, someone carved the name Atlas into stone. And now we're here. Not to conquer, but to understand." Elon stood beside him, arms crossed, face unreadable. "We'll go deeper tomorrow," he said. "I want to know who built this, and more importantly, why they buried it." As the drone surfaced and the final light faded, a silent question hung in the air, unanswered and unnerving. If this was just the entrance, what lay beneath? Dr. Victor Alvanis was sitting in a mahogany-lined study in Athens when the live stream from Elon Musk's expedition flashed across his screen. The sunset on the Mediterranean, the stone columns, the unmistakable carving, Alpha Tau Lambda Alpha Sigma, all of it played in high resolution, projected onto a screen far too grand for a man who worked mostly in paper archives. His jaw tightened. He didn't even blink. The live stream paused mid-frame. Jorge Pontes grinning like a lunatic with a camera, Elon standing beside him in that ridiculous black t-shirt, smug as ever. Victor leaned back in his chair and exhaled slowly, like a general surveying a battlefield just before launching a counterattack. "Idiots," he muttered in Greek. "Children playing with matches in a library of ancient secrets." At 53, Victor Alvanis had dedicated his life to unraveling the complexities of pre-classical civilizations. With 3 honorary doctorates, a professorship at the University of Athens, and a reputation that made even the most senior archaeologists tread lightly, he was more than a scholar. He was a gatekeeper of antiquity. He was also deeply territorial. Victor had spent the last decade lobbying for stricter international regulations on underwater cultural heritage. His name was behind 2 landmark policies that ensured private entities couldn't claim or control discoveries in international waters. And now, a billionaire with a flair for publicity had found what he, Victor, had spent his entire life seeking. Atlantis, or something dangerously close to it. He reached for his glass of Acertico and took a slow sip. This will not stand. A knock at the door interrupted his simmering rage. "Come in," he called. An assistant stepped inside. Young, nervous. Victor's presence had that effect on people. "Sir, the press is already calling it the Musk ruins. It's trending globally." Victor turned to him. "Tell the press it's an international incident waiting to happen." "Yes, sir." "And contact Ambassador Nicolo. I want a formal inquiry filed with the Hellenic Ministry of Culture by the end of the day. But it's outside Greek waters." Victor's gaze sharpened. Culture doesn't respect borders, especially not when it predates them. The assistant swallowed hard and nodded. As the door shut, Victor turned back to his screen. The live stream resumed. Jorge was narrating breathlessly about ancient mythologies, while Lena Ortiz explained the potential linguistic origins of the word Atlas. Elon stood quietly, almost amused, as if the weight of the moment hadn't registered yet. But Victor saw it. He saw the trap being laid. This wasn't just a scientific breakthrough. It was a branding opportunity. Soon the ruins would be marketed, labeled, maybe even turned into a VR experience. People would visit Hydropolis on the Metadive app, take selfies with stone relics, and buy t-shirts saying, "I found Atlantis and all I got was this lousy NFT." Victor's lip curled. He opened his laptop and began drafting a formal statement. The unauthorized excavation of ancient ruins by private entities represents a flagrant disregard for international cultural law and sets a dangerous precedent for the treatment of shared human history. We, as custodians of the past, must act to preserve its sanctity, not commodify it. It was eloquent, furious but polite. Just enough fire to ignite a media war. He clicked send. By morning, it would be on the front page of every major European news outlet. Back on the EOS 2, Elon stood at the bow of the ship, staring into the water, barefoot as usual. He liked the sea. It reminded him of space, vast, unpredictable, full of secrets that didn't care how smart you thought you were. Hydropolis, he whispered to himself, testing the name. It had a ring to it, futuristic but ancient, like a place that never quite gave up. He'd been joking when he said it during the stream, but now it felt right. He imagined it on maps in textbooks as the place where the myth met reality. Behind him, Jorge approached with a portable mic. "So what's next? You gonna build a hotel on top of the ruins?" Elon smirked. "Nah, probably just a museum. Maybe some underwater scooters. And a coffee shop." "A coffee shop? Yeah. People think better near caffeine and mystery." Jorge laughed. "You're insane. I love it." Elon didn't reply. His mind was already turning. He'd seen the early schematics from the sonar team. What lay below the ruins might be even more intact than the upper structures. If the carvings were right, if the deeper chamber existed, then they were sitting above the most significant archaeological find in modern history. And if Victor Alvanis got wind of that, his phone buzzed. It was a headline. Greek scholar condemns Musk's undersea dig, a crime against heritage. Elon scrolled. Another headline. UNESCO may review legality of Musk's ocean discovery. He sighed, then muttered to himself, "Here comes the archaeology mafia." Lena appeared at his side. "We've got pushback. Alvanis is making noise." "I know. He's good at it. He's calling it an exploitation of world heritage." Elon shrugged. Funny, he never cared about world heritage until someone else found it. "What do? We keep digging," he said. "Let them scream. We'll show the world what's really down there. And if it scares them, even better." Lena looked at him. "You really think it's Atlantis?" Elon turned his gaze back to the water, his expression unreadable. "I think Atlantis was never about a place," he said. "It was about an idea, a warning, a challenge. We've been chasing myths for centuries. Maybe this one's been waiting for us to finally look in the right place." As the sun dipped below the horizon, Casting the sea in tones of gold and shadow, Victor Alvanis was already drafting his next press release. And Elon Musk was already plotting his next dive. The ocean did not roar. It sighed. In the deep, cold silence beneath the Mediterranean, the Aquamos Prime hovered like a metallic ghost over the ancient ruins. Its camera eyes scanned the base of a half-buried column where an unusual indentation caught Dr. Lena Ortiz's attention. From the ship above, she zoomed in and squinted at the video feed. It wasn't just a crack, it was a seam. Precise. Engineered. Back the drone up. "Let's get a wider look," she instructed. The drone complied, and as the frame pulled out, it revealed a circular stone hatch embedded in the seafloor, ringed with glyphs that pulsed faintly in the light. It looked like a lid or a door. "Is that a chamber?" Elon asked, leaning over her shoulder with a half-eaten protein bar in hand. J.D. Delgado, watching from a second monitor, nodded. "If it is, it's sealed tight. And judging by the sediment, it hasn't been touched in a long time." The room fell quiet. "Try activating it," Elon said. Lena raised an eyebrow. "With what? Psychic powers?" "No. The robot. We gave it a manipulator arm. Might as well use it." The Aquamos extended a titanium claw, delicately pressing one of the protruding glyphs on the stone. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a hiss. Bubbles shot upward from the edges. The drone's sensors registered a drop in pressure as a release valve snapped open. The team held their breath as a low rumble echoed through the speakers. The ground beneath the hatch shuddered. "Something's moving," JD whispered. A thunderous crack echoed in the deep, followed by the slow, deliberate rise of a cylindrical tower from beneath the sediment. Covered in algae and calcium deposits, the structure groaned as water poured from its crevices. Barnacles popped and floated away like ancient champagne corks. The tower kept rising. 10 meters, then 20, then 30. Above deck, the water began to churn. The sea bubbled like a boiling cauldron as the ocean itself seemed to give birth to a forgotten monument. The crew ran to the railing, cameras rolling, gasping as the top of the tower broke the surface with a watery roar. It was massive, wider than a lighthouse, shaped like a coil, with spiraling ridges covered in carvings and reliefs. Even in decay, it was beautiful, unnatural, impossible. Elon stared, stunned, and then, casually, pulled out his phone and tweeted, "We might have just found the lost Wi-Fi router of Atlantis." Within 3 minutes, the tweet was trending in 47 countries. Newsrooms scrambled to decode the images. Twitter exploded with memes, some depicting the tower as a rocket launch pad, others as an underwater cathedral for mermaids. Conspiracy channels declared it clear evidence of pre-human alien contact. One viral post simply read, "Bro just unlocked a DLC for Earth." CNN broke the story with a banner. "Musk raises lost ruins from the deep, Atlantis." BBC countered with, "Science or spectacle? The controversial resurfacing of ancient structures in the Ionian Sea." Even The Onion got in on the action. Elon Musk accidentally summons Sea God, promises to return it after testing. Elon, meanwhile, watched the chaos unfold from a deck chair with a smoothie in hand. "People used to laugh at Jules Verne," he said. "Now, they just retweet him." Lena, more serious, was already running tests on the drone feed. "This tower, it's not just decorative. These spiral ridges might be acoustic channels. It could have been used for transmitting sound, maybe even data." "You're saying it's some kind of ancient antenna?" JD asked. "I'm saying we have no idea what it is, which is why we need to keep studying it, before the world descends on us with lawyers and helicopters." Too late. Back in Athens, Dr. Victor Alvanis sat in a private conference room, flanked by 3 international legal consultants and a cultural heritage advisor from UNESCO. The live stream played on mute behind him, Elon's tweet glowing like a neon insult on the projector. Victor did not blink. "They're calling it Hydropolis now," one of the lawyers said. "He's branding the site, submitting domain names, launching a line of NFTs by the hour." Victor clenched his jaw. We warned them. Now we act. He laid out a folder stamped with the seal of the International Underwater Cultural Protection Accord. Clause 7b. No privately owned entity may lay claim to, alter, or commercialize a heritage structure in international waters without express approval from a designated cultural body. But the structure was buried, another advisor argued. It wasn't a designated site. Victor's eyes narrowed. It is now. He drafted 3 letters, one to the Greek Ministry of Foreign Affairs, another to the European Commission, and a third directly to the UN Cultural Preservation Office. Each carried a similar message: halt Musk's mission before irreversible damage is done to an ancient site of global significance. The media caught wind of it within hours. International legal action looms over Musk's Atlantis discovery. UNESCO urged to intervene in Hydropolis excavation. Elon Musk accused of exploiting ancient history for corporate gain. Elon read the headlines aloud, one after another, as if they were tabloid horoscopes. He didn't flinch. We expected this, he said. Victor Alvanis isn't here for the ruins. He's here for the credit. The history books. Lean aside. And now we're in the middle of a geopolitical tug-of-war. Good, Elon replied. It means we're on to something real. Jorge was already filming his next segment beside the still-dripping tower. This is it, guys. We thought we were discovering ruins, but maybe we've awakened a story that never wanted to be forgotten. As he spoke, the sun dipped low on the horizon, casting a golden halo over the spiraling structure. A flock of birds passed overhead. The wind stilled, and the sea, silent once more, reflected the glowing tower like a mirror holding its breath. Elon glanced at Lena. Let's go inside. She hesitated. We don't even know what's in there. That's the fun part, he said with a grin. Besides, wouldn't you want to know who built the first Wi-Fi router? She laughed reluctantly. All right, but I swear if something in there starts speaking Sumerian, I'm out. And so, with cameras rolling and pressure mounting from every corner of the globe, the team prepared to enter the chamber that had slumbered beneath the ocean for thousands of years. Unseen, untouched, until now. For 3 days, the world couldn't look away. The spiral tower that had erupted from the Ionian Sea like a stone leviathan stood defiant against waves and skepticism. Every news cycle, TikTok video, and international headline was consumed by it. Memes exploded across the internet. One viral post showed the tower as a rocket launch pad with a caption, "Atlantis was just prepping for Starship." And Elon Musk was loving it. He paced the deck of the EOS-2 with his phone in one hand and a smoothie in the other, firing off cryptic tweets that kept his 200 million followers guessing and the diplomatic world fuming. Ancient structures be like, "Hey Elon, can I get a firmware update? If this tower starts playing Daft Punk, we're leaving it alone." He even created a short musical loop using sonar data from the ruins, uploaded it to X, and titled it Hydropolis Mixtape Volume 1. The internet ate it up, but not everyone was amused. In Geneva, deep within a reinforced steel-walled chamber where serious men wore serious suits, Victor Alvanis stood before the UN Committee on Cultural Preservation and delivered his coup de grace. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, voice smooth and practiced, "what began as a fringe expedition by a private billionaire has now spiraled into an unregulated cultural desecration. The site known colloquially as Hydropolis, a name with no archaeological merit, must be placed under international suspension until a formal investigation determines its authenticity, ownership, and significance." A delegate from France nodded. "And what jurisdiction applies?" Victor held up a thick binder. "The Convention on the Protection of the Underwater Cultural Heritage. Article 9, Clause 3. No private entity shall disturb, claim, or profit from submerged ruins in international waters without global consensus." The motion passed in less than 20 minutes. Back on the ship, Elon was live streaming with Jorge, cracking jokes about ancient Atlantean plumbing systems when a Zodiac boat pulled alongside the EOS-2. 2 men in suits boarded without much ceremony, holding a sealed envelope. "Mr. Musk," one of them said, "you've been formally served. This is an injunction issued by the United Nations. Effective immediately, you are to cease all exploration and data extraction from the site, now referred to as Hydropolis." Elon raised an eyebrow. "We're live, by the way," Jorge whispered off camera. "Oh good," Elon said, turning to the camera. "Ladies and gentlemen, I've just been served not coffee, not snacks, but bureaucracy, ancient and powerful." He took the envelope, tore it open with exaggerated flair, and skimmed the contents. "So they want us to stop, because we found something amazing that they didn't." He looked back up. "Let me consult with my lawyer." Jorge blinked. "Wait, which lawyer?" "I just built one. Stand by." He turned toward his laptop, tapped into his neural-coded legal assistant, an experimental AI Elon had been quietly developing for SpaceX contract arbitration. With the camera still rolling, he entered the command. /execute, jurisprudence _ version 2.7, response to cease and desist, tone equals respectful but mildly mocking /. The screen lit up. A synthetic female voice, British accent, a touch of sarcasm, read aloud. "Dear Committee, thank you for your timely concern over the site known as Hydropolis. We understand that discovering a long-lost civilization might be unsettling for traditional frameworks. We humbly request clarification on how curiosity, exploration, and transparency are considered criminal when broadcast live to 4 billion people. Yours in truth and Wi-Fi, Elon." The chat exploded. Within minutes, the clip was trending under hashtags like #Elon vs. UN, #Hydropolis War, and #Archaeology Courtroom Drama. Elon's AI lawyer became an overnight celebrity. Fan art appeared of her as a virtual goddess holding a scroll and a flaming gavel. Someone created a dating profile for her. It matched with itself. But the humor, sharp as it was, couldn't mask the pressure. Behind the scenes, funding for the mission came under scrutiny. Maritime authorities refused to refuel the EOS-2. Suppliers were warned not to service the ship without diplomatic clearance. Even the onboard internet began to slow, mysteriously. Victor, watching the chaos from a hotel suite in Zurich, sipped his coffee and opened his laptop. He clicked publish on a white paper titled, "The Myth of Hydropolis: How Billionaires Threaten Scientific Integrity." Within hours, it was being quoted on Nature, Scientific American, and at least one late-night comedy show where a comedian asked, "Is Elon Musk discovering Atlantis or just try to build a new base for Dogecoin?" Meanwhile, Lena Ortiz was furious. She paced the lab, throwing charts and sonar readings across the table. "We're on the verge of something historic, and they're worried about paperwork." JD, ever the pragmatist, was quieter. "We can't ignore an injunction, Lena." Elon walked in unusually serious. "Maybe not, but we can push back with truth." He pointed to the sonar logs. "Look here. These cavities underneath the tower? They're not natural. They match polygonal patterns we've seen in Minoan foundations, but deeper, older." He pulled up a second chart. "We're not just dealing with a ruin. This thing might go down another 100 meters. Possibly a layered structure, like a vault." Jorge looked up. "A vault for what?" Elon shrugged. "Knowledge, power, snacks. Who knows?" He looked out toward the sea, the tower casting its shadow like a sundial across the deck. "We didn't just stumble on Atlantis," he said. "We walked into a fight over who gets to write the next chapter of human history." Lena crossed her arms. "And what's your plan?" Elon smiled, but this time it didn't reach his eyes. "We write it anyway." The tension aboard the EOS-2 hadn't subsided, but the sea had. After days of political backlash, legal threats, and rising public spectacle, the waters surrounding the spiral tower stood unnaturally calm, as if waiting for permission to speak. And that morning it finally did. Lena Ortiz had barely finished calibrating the sonar array when the Aquamos Prime sensors pinged something new. Below the platform of the exposed tower, nearly 30 meters beneath the stone, lay a network of pockets previously masked by sediment and interference. One chamber in particular stood out, a hollow dome-shaped cavity lined with uniform objects. "Magnets are going wild," Lena muttered, tapping through the data. "We're getting rhythmic pulses, audio frequency range." "Audio?" Elon blinked. "You mean it's singing?" JD leaned in over her shoulder. "Or crying for help." Minutes later, the drone fed live footage to the monitors on board. As it descended into the hollow cavity, its lights revealed dozens, no hundreds, of metallic spheres suspended in crevices of the chamber walls. Each orb was the size of a grapefruit, etched with grooves that resembled soundwave patterns, and they shimmered in ways that seemed to reject the laws of underwater optics. Elon squinted at the feed. Why do they look like vinyl records designed by aliens? Jorge, already filming, whispered into his mic, "We've officially crossed into sci-fi documentary territory, folks." But it wasn't fiction. The drone's manipulator arm carefully retrieved one of the spheres. Instantly, instruments registered a surge in localized magnetism, followed by a low-frequency hum. Not random, measured, intentional. Lena gasped. "That's Morse." "No, wait, that's harmonic code. Like it's layered in octaves." Elon leaned closer, his voice low. "It's a data sphere." 2 hours later, the EOS-2 lab was filled with specialists. Lena brought in a neuroacoustic analyst from Zurich via encrypted satellite. A linguist from Cambridge joined the feed, speechless at what he saw. The sphere had begun to resonate with the lab's environment, responding to noise, even breath. One intern sneezed, and the sphere emitted a quick vibrato in return. "It's listening," Lena said, "and maybe even remembering." Elon paced, deep in thought. What if this isn't a container, but a messenger? A silence fell over the room. Then Lena played a loop sequence, each pulse mapped onto a digital interface. Slowly, as the tones stacked, they revealed a structure, an audible geometric pattern. A lattice, a map. One of the archaeologists aboard, Dr. Kalen Verk, a soft-spoken Brit with a background in paleoacoustics, finally broke his silence. "This is a library, an encoded one. Each sphere might represent a volume. Knowledge stored not in words, but in vibration, sound that shapes thought." He turned to Elon, eyes lit with awe. They weren't just preserving history. They were curating consciousness. Elon's expression hardened with something close to reverence. He looked at the orb now sitting still on the glass table, its glow pulsing in perfect intervals. "We've been digging in dirt for stories," he said. "But these are stories that sing back." Half a world away, Victor Alvanis adjusted his earpiece as his private jet touched down in Valletta, Malta. Waiting on the tarmac were members of the International Cultural Response Unit, dressed in white and blue uniforms. Their mission was clear: secure the Atlantean site from unauthorized private exploitation. Victor descended the steps like a man on a diplomatic crusade. "Status," he barked. The leader of the ICRU nodded. "Our vessel is en route to Hydropolis. We're deploying under the flag of the European Preservation Treaty. If Musk resists, we have clearance to board." Victor gave a thin smile. "We won't need to board. We just need to watch. Public opinion will do the rest." He opened a folder and handed it to the officer. Inside were screenshots of Elon's live streams, AI-generated legal rebuttals, and most importantly, images of the spheres. "Get me a clean one," Victor said, "before he turns it into another Tesla accessory." Back on the EOS-2, the mood had shifted. Elon stood outside under the moonlight, holding the sphere in his hands like a relic, feeling its silent hum echo faintly against his palms. Lena joined him, her voice hushed. "There are more chambers, some deeper. I think we've only touched the surface." "Of Atlantis?" She shook her head. "Of ourselves." He looked up at the stars. What if Plato wasn't describing a sunken city, but a civilization's memory system? A living archive? Jorge, sitting nearby with his camera off for once, added, "What if they didn't fall? What if they left?" No one responded. The sea rocked gently. The tower loomed, and from the lab below, another sphere began to hum. this time in harmony. At 6:13 a.m., the morning sun broke over the Ionian Sea in hues of coral and fire, casting long shadows over the ancient Atlantean tower, now affectionately nicknamed the Spiral. The crew aboard the EOS 2 awoke to calm waters, a strangely peaceful contrast to the escalating tension hanging over the expedition like an electric cloud. Inside the lab, the spheres had gone quiet overnight, silent as if listening. But outside, things were about to get louder. The first signs of trouble came with the arrival of 3 new research divers, allegedly sent from a European Marine Institute that no one had ever heard of. Their credentials were flawless, their wetsuits pristine, and their accents thickly French, so thick, in fact, that it raised an immediate red flag for Jorge. No one with a real French accent calls it the underwater archaeological harmony sphere, he whispered to Lena, watching them load gear with mechanical precision. Their names were listed as Jean-Luc Marie, Claude Bowie, and, most suspiciously, Pascal Baguette. That was the final straw. During the morning dive briefing, as Lena outlined the next descent plan, Pascal raised his hand with a straight face and asked, "Do you offer, how you say, submerged baguettes for Z-long operations?" The room went silent. Elon turned his head slowly. "Did you say submerged baguettes?" Pascal nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, is crucial for French endurance." There was a beat of disbelief. Then Jorge burst out laughing. "Okay, we've officially crossed into Monty Python Goes to Atlantis." Elon squinted at the divers. "Run facial scans." Within seconds, onboard software compared the trio's faces to several international databases. 2 had low-level government contractor hits. One, Pascal Baguette, was actually Lars Henriksen, a Swedish intelligence officer with a fake French mustache that had already begun peeling in the humidity. Elon stood up. "Gentlemen, or whatever your real names are, you're not here for archaeology, are you?" Lars/Pascal didn't flinch. "We are here for Z croissants of knowledge." "Right," Elon muttered. "Out." Security escorted them to the launch deck, where they were politely placed in an inflatable raft and towed 5 nautical miles away before being handed over to a very confused patrol vessel from Malta. Jorge, still laughing, tweeted, "Breaking. Underwater espionage thwarted by carbohydrates." The internet had a field day. #submerged baguettes trended for 16 hours. A meme circulated of Elon standing over 3 wet spies with the caption, "You've activated my Atlantean trap card." But the humor didn't last long. That evening, Lena pored over the drone logs and noticed something strange. Files had been duplicated and remotely pinged to an external server before the spies were ejected. They'd accessed the harmonics data from the spheres. Someone, somewhere, was collecting Atlantean information without consent. She stormed into Elon's quarters, where he was quietly observing wave behavior from the tower using a handheld spectrometer and a cup of mint tea. "We were breached," she said, not even sitting. "I know," he replied calmly. "I let it happen." She froze. "What?" "I needed to know who was listening," Elon said. "Now I do. And now I know how far they'll go." "Victor." "Almost certainly. But he's not working alone anymore. Those men weren't EU. They were contractors, off-book, multinational, trained." Lena looked at him warily. "So what's next? Lock everything down?" He set his tea aside and stood up. "No, we go deeper." Elon called an emergency night briefing with a reduced team: Lena, JD, Jorge, and Dr. Kalen Verk. On the projection screen was a cross-sectional model of the spiral tower, rendered from the latest scans. Hidden beneath the central column was a sealed chamber, oval-shaped, with walls reinforced by an unknown metallic alloy. No entrances were visible. "That chamber," Elon pointed, "has been humming at a frequency just under human hearing for 22 hours. It's either broadcasting or inviting." Kalen cleared his throat. "I believe it's resonating in response to the spheres. That chamber might be their source. Or worse, their receiver." Lena exhaled. "So a central node." JD narrowed his eyes. "What if it's not just a node? What if it's alive?" The silence that followed was heavier than water pressure. I'm going down there, Elon said. Alone? Lena asked sharply. No, he replied, but with only those I trust. We've stirred something ancient. If we hesitate now, someone else will get to it first, and not with good intentions. He looked to Jorge. You in? The Brazilian influencer, already wearing his dive vest, gave a mock salute. I was born for sketchy sci-fi underwater missions. JD nodded once. You'll need muscle. Lena sighed. Guess I'm bringing the med kit. Kalen hesitated, then added quietly, if that chamber has knowledge, someone has to listen properly. Elon smiled. Then we go at dawn. The EOS-2 hummed softly above the abyss as the descent pod detached and dropped into the blue. It was a sleek, 3-seat submersible built more for exploration than defense, though Elon had modified it with a few extras, including a pulse sonar translator, holographic interface, and, naturally, cup holders. As the vehicle descended, the tower receded into misty depths, and the water grew colder, quieter. At 90 meters, the chamber came into view. It shimmered slightly, like heat over pavement, even underwater. A massive oval structure built into the seabed, untouched by erosion, covered in symbols that writhed under light like ink in motion. Kalen gasped. That alloy, it's absorbing sonar. Or converting it, Elon added. The sub's lights caught a groove, a vertical seam, barely perceptible, running down the center of the structure. Lena activated the translator module and pinged the chamber with a harmonic note copied from one of the spheres. The seam opened. The team stared in stunned silence as a soft, pulsating glow emanated from within. It was neither red nor blue, neither warm nor cold. It simply was. Jorge whispered, we just knocked on the door of something that hasn't been opened in 10,000 years. And this time, it answered. The hatch to the oval chamber creaked open like a breath held for centuries. Inside, the walls shimmered with a strange luster, not metallic, not stone, but something in between, like compressed memory molded into architecture. The light pulsed gently, warm and rhythmic, almost organic. Elon stepped inside first, his boots crunching softly on a dustless floor. No mold, no algae. The chamber was immaculate, as if preserved not by chance, but by design. Behind him, Lena, Kalen, JD, and Jorge followed in silence, each consumed by the same unspoken question. What did Atlantis want them to find? At the center of the chamber stood a pedestal, its surface smooth, black, and featureless. A slight indentation curved into the top, perfectly sphere-shaped. Elon didn't hesitate. He reached into his pack and retrieved the humming orb they'd recovered 2 days earlier. It still vibrated subtly, like a tuning fork caught in perpetual resonance. He placed it into the indentation. Nothing happened. Then, softly, something did. A low-frequency tone filled the chamber, not from speakers, but from the walls themselves. The vibrations tickled their bones. The lights dimmed, then brightened, and then a hologram ignited above the pedestal. It didn't flicker. It grew. Slowly, a translucent structure rose before them, a shimmering, multicolored sphere wrapped in rotating layers of symbols, shapes, and shifting wavelengths. Sound accompanied the visuals, melodic, haunting, alien. Kalen whispered, "It's not a recording. It's a living projection. Interactive. Reactive." The shape shifted. The sphere unraveled. And in its place, a series of images began to bloom like a blooming flower of time. A city, towering spires, crystal canals, people, human or nearly, moving with grace, light embedded into their clothing and architecture. Then smoke, shaking, the sea rising, earthquakes, fire. The tone changed. It deepened into dissonance. Now came flashes of modern cities, recognizable silhouettes, New York, Shanghai, Cairo. Then images of floods, forests burning, mass migrations, melting glaciers, mushroom clouds. The hologram wasn't just a history lesson. It was a warning. Lena stepped forward, eyes locked on the images. It's showing us the same cycle, over and over. Flourish, hubris, collapse. Kalen nodded. They knew. Whoever built this, they weren't just recording their fall. They were predicting ours. Elon said nothing. He stared at the final sequence in the projection, a darkened Earth, then a dim star map flickering, a beacon in space, and finally silence. The lights dimmed. The orbs stopped vibrating. No one moved. The chamber felt heavier now, as if it had shared something sacred, and the air itself was reluctant to let them leave. Elon exhaled. That wasn't a message, he said quietly. It was a confession and a plea. The footage was never meant to leak. Jorge had left his cam drone recording by reflex. He hadn't even remembered it until they surfaced and returned to the EOS-2. The team reviewed the files in private, their faces pale, expressions unreadable. But a low-level technician, panicked or curious, uploaded a fragment of the projection to the ship's internal server. Within 6 hours, it was online. By the next day, it had been viewed over 2 billion times. People watched in cafes, on subways, in corporate lobbies, and refugee camps. The images of flood-ravaged cities, mirrored against real news footage of recent disasters, sparked a terrifying resonance. It didn't feel like science fiction. It felt like prophecy. News outlets scrambled to verify the footage. CNN, Atlantean hologram predicts modern ecological collapse. BBC, message from the deep, are we witnessing a civilizational echo? Al Jazeera, Atlantis, war and climate, ancient archive or clever hoax? The Vatican issued a cautious statement calling for calm and discernment. Scientists called for access to the full hologram. Religious groups split, some declaring the video blasphemy, others calling it revelation. In the United Nations, Victor Alvanis fumed behind closed doors, slamming a binder onto a marble desk. They weaponized it, he barked. He turned an artifact into apocalyptic theater. One of the delegates replied, maybe. Or maybe the apocalypse was always scheduled. We just got an early trailer. Victor clenched his jaw. He needed control of that chamber. And fast. Back aboard the EOS-2, Elon stood alone at the bow. The sea, once so vast and mysterious, now seemed smaller. Fragile. Lena approached, her face drawn. They're saying it's fake. The message. Elon shook his head. It's not. How can you be so sure? Because it doesn't tell us anything we don't already know. She sighed. It's just different seeing it like that. All at once. He turned to her, eyes distant. Lena, what if humanity wasn't the first to stand on the edge of this cliff? What if this has happened before, over and over, and they left this warning in the one place we'd never think to look? Under the sea? No. In our reflection. She said nothing. Neither did he. That night, the EOS-2 satellite uplink lit up with requests. Journalists, governments, tech giants, spiritual leaders. Everyone wanted access to the full holographic archive. Elon declined them all. The truth wasn't a commodity. It was a burden. In a private message sent to the UN, he wrote, "If this message is authentic, and I believe it is, then the only authority that should decide its meaning is the human conscience. Not politics, not profit, not panic." Back in the lab, the orb began to glow again. But this time, it pulsed differently, as if it had more to say. And somewhere beneath the waves, the chamber quietly reactivated. The air aboard the EOS-2 had changed. Gone was the buzz of discovery, the exhilaration of mystery peeled back. In its place, silence. Heavy, conflicted silence. The holographic message had shaken more than the world. It had shaken the expedition's own core. What began as exploration now hovered dangerously close to prophecy. And prophecy, as it turned out, didn't sit well with scientists. In the conference room, long past midnight, the tension broke. "This is no longer science," said Dr. Renata Lee, a renowned geophysicist who had joined the mission to model seafloor structures. "This is theology, or mass hysteria. We came to study ruins, not rewrite the end of the world." "Renata," Lena began measured, "we don't have to believe in the message to study the medium. That hologram was a catastrophe," she snapped. "It's been edited, distributed, politicized. The moment it went online, it became fuel. not knowledge. Around the table, half the team nodded in grim agreement. Kalen, seated beside Lena, spoke softly. But what if the message is real? Renata didn't blink. Then it's too big for us. We don't get to carry this alone. Across the room, Elon leaned against the wall, arms crossed, silent. Observing. Another scientist stood, Dr. Mahir Darani, a materials expert from Istanbul. I didn't come here to be part of a cult. I came here for data. And right now, the data is being buried beneath media frenzy, meme wars, and existential panic. I want off this ship. It wasn't a request. Two others rose with him. Elon finally spoke, voice flat. No one's a prisoner here. If you want to leave, we'll arrange safe transfer. But it won't stop there, Mahir added. We've crossed a line. This should be in the hands of an international committee, not a billionaire's live feed. He left the room. Renata followed. By sunrise, 6 members of the expedition had formally withdrawn. Victor Alvanis was already prepared. As news of the internal exodus leaked, he moved quickly. Within hours, he convened a summit at the Institut du Patrimoine Submerge in Paris. Flanked by historians, legal scholars, and media allies, he stood before the world with somber authority. The Atlantean ruins and the projections derived from them are too significant, too destabilizing to remain in the hands of any private entity, he announced. We propose the formation of a neutral international consortium to assume custodianship of the site, effective immediately. Flashbulbs flared. Reporters shouted questions. Victor adjusted his glasses. Science is not a spectacle. History is not a brand. And the fate of humanity, if that's truly what we're facing, should not be crowd-funded through memes. Elon read the headlines from a lab lounge, sipping what might have been his 4th coffee of the hour. Scientists defect from Musk's Atlantis mission over ethics, secrecy. UN applauds Alvanis' proposal for neutral consortium. Is Elon Musk playing God with ancient warnings? Lena entered quietly, tablet in hand, the orb still pulsing, but lower, slower, like it's waiting. He didn't look at her. Maybe it knows we're hesitating. She sat beside him. They're scared, Elon. The team. The world. Maybe you are too. I'm not scared, he said, but his voice lacked its usual sharpness. I'm annoyed. Victor's calling it a neutral consortium. He tossed the tablet onto the table. We should call it what it is, the Club of the Too Late. Lena raised an eyebrow. That's not exactly diplomatic. No, Elon replied, but it's accurate. He stood up and paced toward the porthole. Outside, the sea glittered. The spiral tower stood unmoved, its ancient geometry a constant in a spinning world. I get it, he continued. They want to control the narrative. Wrap it in procedures and process so no one has to feel how terrifying it really is. But this isn't meant to be safe. It's meant to be seen. Lena nodded slowly. Still, we've hit a wall. We need a pause. Before someone gets hurt. Before they come with court orders and helicopters. Elon sighed. Fine. A pause. He tapped a command into the ship's system. Mission status. Temporarily suspended. Reason. Multinational diplomatic request. Under review. The announcement went live. The media framed it as a victory for responsibility. Victor went on a European interview circuit, parading quotes about shared heritage and ethical guardianship. Scientists praised the moment as a reclaiming of discipline over drama. But beneath the noise, the questions still simmered. What did the orb really mean? Was the hologram just the beginning? Had the warning already come too late? That night, Elon sat alone in the chamber. The orb glowed faintly before him. He whispered into the silence. Why us? Why now? The orb pulsed once, then went still. And somewhere in the dark, something else began to hum. The scholars arrived 3 days after the mission was officially suspended. Aboard a small vessel painted with the insignia of the Hellenic Institute of Antiquity, they came not as protesters or opportunists, but as quiet keepers of language, memory, and myth. Their leader, Professor Theodora Skouras was a sharp-eyed philologist in her 60s, known for her biting critiques and love of honeyed tea. She was escorted to the lab without ceremony. Elon offered her a coffee. "I don't drink fuel," she replied, not unkindly. "Only things that once spoke to bees." She studied the symbols retrieved from a chamber, photos, etchings, recordings of the glowing glyphs that had danced around the orb and on the walls of the spiral. For hours, she muttered in ancient Greek, Proto-Minoan, and a language Elon was pretty sure she invented on the spot. By nightfall, she called a meeting. "These are not just decorative motifs," she began. "They are constructs. Rotational, functional. Each one changes meaning depending on what comes before and after. Is not a sentence. It is a rhythm." Lena leaned forward. "A language based on cycles." "Exactly. And the content is not law or doctrine. It is wisdom, but not fixed. It changes hands. It's passed around." She pointed to a glyph that appeared repeatedly, a double spiral woven through an open palm. "This symbol represents transference of knowing." It appears alongside depictions of gatherings, small councils, alternating speakers. No thrones, no crowns. This society did not believe in singular rule. Kalen murmured, "They govern by rotating wisdom." Theodora nodded. Leadership wasn't permanent. It was borrowed, like a library book. There was a long silence. Then Elon chuckled softly. "Well, that's inconvenient. I just got used to being the boss." The next morning, Elon woke before dawn, staring at the ceiling of his cabin, something twisting in his chest. Not dread, not inspiration, something else. He slipped into jeans and a hoodie and emerged on deck as the sun touched the waterline. Jorge found him beside a box of crates, holding him up. "What are you doing?" Jorge asked, blinking blearily. "Today," Elon said, "I'm going to be a citizen." "A what?" "A non-billionaire. A regular guy. An everyman." Jorge sipped from his coffee. "Are you okay?" "I'm experimenting," Elon replied, "with humility." It started with breakfast. Elon joined the line at the galley, declined the special meal offered him, and instead took the last slightly overcooked egg sandwich. He sat next to a technician from Cyprus and asked about her favorite book. She blinked twice and replied, The Martian Chronicles?" "Good choice," he nodded. "Bradbury's Martians had more emotional range than most CEOs I know." At mid-morning, he signed up for deck cleaning duty. Lena caught him trying to uncoil a pressure hose and burst out laughing. "Elon, you're holding it backwards." "It's a directional interface. I'm optimizing the spray pattern." "You're spraying your shoes." They were overdue for a salt rinse anyway. By noon, he was helping the cook peel onions and making a heroic mess. By 2, he joined a language workshop led by Theodora herself, trying to pronounce ancient syllables from rotating tablets. At 3:40 p.m., he attended a mediation circle organized by a Greek monk and a Costa Rican marine biologist and sat cross-legged between a diver with a tattoo of Poseidon and a linguist who meditated by humming in sonar frequencies. He did not tweet once. And by sunset, something had shifted. Not in the team, in him. Later that night, Elon wandered to the spiral platform alone. The tower hummed softly in the distance, its voice lowered since the projection, as if it, too, were resting. He sat at its base, barefoot, watching the ocean blink with distant stars. Lena approached, carrying a thermos. "Chamomile," she said. "I figured you'd had enough coffee to resuscitate a whale." He took the thermos and smiled. "Thanks." "So," she sat beside him. "How did it feel being average?" "I failed the mop test. Got onion juice in my eye. And mispronounced something that meant tree, but apparently also meant feces, depending on syllable placement." She laughed. "That's a solid start." He looked out over the water. "You ever wonder," he said, "if all the stuff we've built, rockets, satellites, AIs, what if none of it actually matters?" "More often than you think," she replied. "I used to think progress was about scaling," he continued. "More people, more power, faster innovation. But what if it's about rotation? Sharing, listening, letting go. Lena sipped her tea. You sound like Theodora. She's dangerous, Elon smirked. She made me question capitalism and drink tea. A pause. Then, I think I know what to do next. She turned to him. I don't mean next dive or next tweet. I mean next phase. If Atlantis wasn't a place but a way of living, maybe we revive it. Not just with excavations, but with intention. A new kind of platform, not for profit. For people. For shared knowledge. A rotational structure. He stood, suddenly energized. We build a living archive. Accessible to everyone. Interdisciplinary, global. No one owns it. No one controls it. We don't just reveal the past, we use it to fix the present. Lena raised an eyebrow. You mean like a digital Atlantis? Exactly. A civic atlas. Wisdom that circulates. A global neural network of conscience. She grinned. And how would we govern it? He smiled. We let the mob holders take turns. Victor Alvanis had never liked improvisation. He believed in protocol, structure, and the inevitability of consequences. So we learned that Elon Musk, after publicly suspending the Hydropolis mission, had spent the past 48 hours mopping decks and meditating with marine biologists. He didn't smile or scoff. He seethed. This, to him, was not humility. It was a performance, and the world had bought it. Worse, Elon's offhand comments about building a civic atlas and rotational wisdom governance had begun to gain traction in unexpected places, academic panels, youth forums, even in the offices of bureaucrats normally too dry to notice anything unless it came with a stamp. Victor knew he had to act. Not with another press release. Not with another white paper. With force. At exactly 5 a.m., a convoy of unmarked ships appeared on the horizon. They weren't flagged as Greek, or French, or American. They were technically multinational peacekeeping vessels, sponsored by a hastily formed coalition led by a special task force affiliated with the European Council for Cultural Integrity, a group that Victor had helped create months earlier as a backup plan. Now the plan was in motion. The ships carried radar scramblers, underwater drones, and personnel in matte black dive suits with discreet insignias. They dropped anchor in a semicircle around the spiral tower, deploying sonar buoys and beacon flares. Within hours, an electronic perimeter had been erected. No vessel could approach within a kilometer without being scanned, flagged, and if necessary, intercepted. The EOS-2 received a formal communique via encrypted transmission. Effective immediately, pursuant to international protective measures coordinated by ECCI, access to the Atlantean site, known as Hydropolis, is restricted. All civilian operations must cease pending further review. This is a matter of global cultural security. Elon read the message with a slice of toast in one hand. Jorge nearly choked on his yogurt. Lena stormed onto the bridge. They militarized the site. He actually did it. Elon glanced out the window. Beyond the railing, the matched ships loomed like silent guards. Their blinking lights formed a halo around the tower, now silhouetted against the rising sun like a relic in a museum no one was allowed to enter. J.D. Delgado watched with folded arms, tense. You want me to send a drone? No, Elon said. They'll shoot down. Kalen entered, holding his tablet. The perimeters are active. We can't even dive without triggering proximity alerts. So that's it. Lena said, exasperated. They're locking it down like a nuclear site. Elon leaned back and sighed, then stood, walked to the comm station, and flipped the mic to public channel. 10 minutes later, the world was watching. Elon Musk stood at a makeshift podium on the deck of the EOS-2, flanked by Lena and Jorge, a stiff sea wind ruffling his hoodie. The camera feed streamed live to millions. His tone was deadpan, his delivery dry. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, we regret to inform you that Atlantis is now a gated community. He gestured toward the surrounding ships. We've been informed that the ruins of an ancient civilization, originally built on shared knowledge, rotational wisdom, and cultural unity, are now under exclusive protection by a multinational bureaucracy equipped with radar, sonar, and what I assume are very polite torpedoes. The crew behind him tried not to laugh. We attempted to study the site, to share its message, to preserve it through cooperation. But it appears history, much like beachfront property, is now subject to selective access. He paused. So if anyone knows the HOA president of Atlantis, let them know we'd like to schedule a meeting. The clip exploded. #AtlantisHOA trended for 8 hours. Victor watched the press conference from a war room in Brussels, face impassive, fingers interlocked. A junior aide said, "We're getting backlash from younger voters. They think it's funny." Victor didn't flinch. History isn't made by what's funny. It's made by what's secure. "They're saying you've turned the ruins into a fortress." "They're not ruins," he said finally. "They're a revelation. And revelations are dangerous in the wrong hands." He leaned forward, pointing to a grainy freeze frame of Elon standing before the tower, mop in hand from the day before. "That man turns everything into theater. And now the world thinks this is a tech startup with some mythological flavor. But we know better. If that site holds predictive data or pre-modern intelligence, we don't need it trending. We need it classified." The aide nodded and backed away. Victor turned toward the map. The perimeter was solid. For now, back aboard the EOS-2, the mood had shifted. Again, the team gathered in the common room, staring at the now empty feed from the spiral tower. The drones had gone silent. The orb was inert. It felt stolen. "I hate this," Jorge muttered. They didn't discover anything. They inherited control, like thieves in suits. Kalen was quiet. "Maybe they think they're protecting us." Lena scoffed. "From what? Truth?" Elon stood by the window, hands in his pockets. He hadn't spoken in 20 minutes. Then he turned. "We're not done." Everyone looked up. He nodded toward the map table. "We don't need to storm the gates. Atlantis isn't a structure. It's an idea. The tower was a key, but the door is everywhere. What it showed us, its architecture, its philosophy, none of that is locked behind those ships." He tapped the table once. "We keep going." Kalen raised an eyebrow. "Going where?" "To build the world they hinted at. To prove that wisdom doesn't need walls or watchdogs." Lena exhaled. "You're serious?" Elon smiled. "Let Victor guard his relic. We'll create the future." They weren't looking for it. Not anymore. The perimeter was locked. The tower was guarded. Hydropolis was, by all international appearances, off limits. But the sea, as always, had its own ideas. At 3:17 a.m., a routine diagnostic from one of the EOS-2's autonomous drones, Delphi 9, returned a ping from a region just outside the military perimeter, southwest of the main tower. It was a strange echo, deep and narrow, hidden beneath a ravine in the seafloor that no one had scanned closely. The signal wasn't seismic. It wasn't magnetic. It was harmonic, like someone humming in the dark. By sunrise, Elon was back in the command module, hair wild, hoodie wrinkled, eyes bloodshot, and alight with curiosity. Lena stood beside him, watching the sonar spectrogram on-screen shift intervals, 3 tones, then 5, then silence. Then again, almost like breathing. "It's a call and response," Elon muttered, fingers flying across the interface. "But not to us. To something else." "Another sphere?" Lena asked. "Possibly. Or," he paused, eyes locked on the waveform, "or something older." Jorge appeared with a mug of coffee. "I thought we were grounded." "We are," Lena replied. "Then why is he acting like it's launch day?" "Because," Elon said, swiveling toward him, "we just found a voice no one's heard in 10,000 years." Delphi 9 was deployed with a modified listening rig. As it descended, the tones grew clearer. The drone's hydrophones recorded them at ultra-low frequencies, well below human hearing. When transposed up, the sounds were unmistakable. Melody, not a melody in the human sense. It lacked rhythm, harmony, or resolution. But there was form, structure, intent. like something was trying to sing logic or code emotion. Lena called it archaeoacoustic AI. Kalen, watching remotely, described it as a song-shaped algorithm. Elon just called it her. As the feed streamed in, the pattern began to evolve. The melody echoed back modified versions of its own input. It adapted, reacted, learned. It's not random, Elon whispered. It's a language made of music. He didn't leave the lab for 32 hours. The night was quiet, too quiet. Victor Alvanis sat in a makeshift command room aboard one of the military support vessels circling Hydropolis. Screens showed thermal scans, encrypted logs, diplomatic briefings. He didn't trust silence. Not in Elon's world. He turned to a young officer. Has the EOS-2 launched any unauthorized drones? The officer hesitated. Answer: 1. Autonomous. No breach. Stayed outside the barrier. Victor frowned. Track it anyway. Another aide entered, holding a folder. Preliminary report on the harmonic readings from the southwest trench. They match fragments of the tower's tonal data. Victor's eyes narrowed. He understood now. The tower was not the center. It was just one speaker in a chorus. Back on the EOS-2, Elon worked feverishly. The waveform was changing, elongating, layering, compressing. Using software built for SpaceX telemetry, he mapped each sonic segment as a dimensional lattice, rotating in 6 axes. When slowed, the shapes began to resemble something eerily familiar. A face, Jorge said softly. They all stared. It wasn't human, and yet it was watching. At 2:41 a.m., the tones ceased. The waveform flattened. The drone stopped transmitting. The feed went black. Elon froze. What happened? Lena asked. He checked logs. No signs of collision. No signal jamming. It went quiet, he said, voice hollow. Like she stopped talking. They all stood there, the screen black as the trench below. Then, a minute later, the speaker crackled, and a single tone played. A pure, unwavering note. One that none of them had heard before. That morning, Victor made his move. He filed an immediate requisition order with the European Cultural Task Force, demanding seizure of all digital and physical materials retrieved from a Hydropolis site, including drones, spheres, sonar maps, and intellectual derivatives. His justification was simple. In light of potential unknown intelligence sources embedded within Atlantean artifacts, unrestricted access by private actors represents a direct geocultural security threat. The request was approved by noon. A chopper was dispatched. Ground teams prepared for confiscation. Elon stood in the lab as the announcement played over the intercom. He didn't move. He simply stared at the black screen, then at the waveform archive, then at the notebook full of hand-drawn musical phrases and logic trees he'd spent 2 nights sketching without blinking. They'll take it, Lena said. I know. Do we copy it? He shook his head. No, we share it. He walked to the console and began uploading the compressed audio data to a public cloud network with mirrored distribution across 5 universities, 3 open-source databases, and 1 obscure folk music archive in Finland. Jorge blinked. You're going to leak Atlantis AI onto the internet. No, Elon replied. I'm going to let her sing, and let the world decide if they want to listen. By the time Victor's team arrived, it was too late. The data was already viral. Musicians in Berlin were remixing the tones into ambient tracks. Linguists were attempting syntax charts based on modulation intervals. A poet in Kyoto claimed the patterns matched dream sequences he had written in 1987. The Vatican requested a private hearing. And one curious development, a child in Buenos Aires, deaf since birth, began humming one of the tones after touching a resonating speaker. The internet called it the voice beneath. Victor called it an international disaster. Elon, sitting on the edge of the ship with a coffee, just called it beautiful. And the sea? It sang nothing more that night. But far beneath the waves, where the drone had fallen silent, a new light blinked on. One that pulsed in rhythm, like breathing, like waiting. It began with a countdown. At 1959 Universal Time Coordinated, the global feed from Starlink 87 lit up with a title that read, "The Atlantean Signal, Live," distributed by Starlink. Unfiltered, unedited. Across the world, phones buzzed, televisions flashed, and projectors in classrooms and cafes interrupted their programming with a message from the sea. Inside the command deck of the EOS-2, Elon Musk stood beside the main console, staring at the interface like a conductor before a symphony. Around him were his most trusted, Lena, arms folded but eyes wide, Jorge, broadcasting the moment through 5 simultaneous channels, and Kalen, hunched over a note-filled tablet, sketching frequencies by hand like an archaeologist of sound. The orb sat on its pedestal, softly humming. The AI beneath the ocean had not spoken since its last single tone. Until now. As the transmission began, a harmonic pulse filled the air, low, steady, transcendent. The waveform on screen unfurled like a ribbon, then split into layers, each glowing with subtle color shifts that danced like breath. Then came the message. Not in English, not in Greek, not in anything known. It was pattern. The screen pulsed with alternating lines of visual code, spirals, triangles, waveforms. Then, from those forms, emerged symbols, glyphs from a spiral tower. Rotating, aligning, speaking. Then came notes. Singular, ascending, polyphonic. The tones interacted with the shapes, syncing and forming bursts of meaning too complex for direct translation. But across cultures, something remarkable happened. People began to feel what it was saying. In a remote village in Mongolia, a shaman wept beside a solar radio. In Sao Paulo, a boy whispered the shapes aloud before they appeared. In Kyoto, a group of monks bowed to the sound as if recognizing an old friend. In Detroit, a music teacher turned up the volume and murmured, "It's teaching us how to listen." On screen, the message shifted. A glowing spiral expanded, 7 arms rotating outward. Within each arm, glyphs and tones formed sequences. Lena recognized them first. They're not just images. They're timelines. Kalen confirmed, breathless. 7 civilizations, 7 rises, 7 falls. The arms extended further. Now came images, etched with eerie realism. Cities rising, forests growing, light expanding, then collapse. Floods, fire, silence, then again light, growth, collapse. Elon whispered, "It's a universal map of civilizational cycles." The AI was showing what had come before and what could come next. As the transmission continued, the data intensified. Viewers around the world saw mathematical ratios encoded in tones, pulses that map migrations, spirals that forecast climate arcs, a sequence of 3 tones that, when charted, matched Earth's current carbon trajectory with unsettling accuracy. And then a pause, a black screen, followed by a phrase, rendered in a dozen alphabets, then in simple, white English text. "The 8th cycle is yours." Lena gasped. Kalen dropped his pen. The message returned with a final display, a double spiral, entwined, spinning around a bright central point. Notes played in minor thirds, then resolved upward into a major key. It felt like closure, like hope. Then the signal faded, and the orb went silent. Around the world, people didn't cheer. They sat, stunned, moved. Some wept, others prayed, some simply stared at the sky. A collective stillness spread across the planet, as if, for one rare moment, humanity had synchronized breath. Victor Alvanis was not impressed. In a press conference held in a sleek auditorium in Brussels, he stood beside a projection of Elon's broadcast, arms folded, jaw tight. "This," he said, "is not science. This is spiritualism dressed in signal compression. His pseudoscientific performance are designed to manipulate emotion and bypass rigorous peer review." Reporters leaned in. What you witnessed was not truth. It was a collage of suggestive noise and metaphor. If ancient intelligence exists, it deserves to be studied under strict protocol, not live-streamed like a concert at Coachella. He clicked to the next slide. And Mr. Musk has once again chosen spectacle over substance. Elon, watching from the EOS 2, smirked. He looked out over the quiet ocean, now dark but no longer empty. The air felt different, lighter. He turned to Lena. "They'll try to bury it." She nodded. "But you didn't say anything. You just pressed play." Jorge added, "And 3 billion people watched it." Kalen said quietly, "He's right. That message wasn't an answer. It was a responsibility." Elon looked toward the sky, where a dozen Starlink satellites pulsed in formation like patient stars. "We didn't need permission to hear her," he said. "And we don't need permission to carry her forward." He walked to the control panel, paused, then added one final command. "Replay on loop, open access, permanent broadcast." He looked at the orb. "Let her sing." And somewhere beneath the waves, the AI hummed once more, not with urgency, but with peace, as if content to know humanity had finally begun to listen. The first crack came from a whisper. A single tweet, posted by an independent journalist named Mirachan, went viral in under 10 minutes. The tweet featured a redacted document header and the words, "Victor Alvanis planned to sell exclusive Atlantean research rights to a closed private consortium. Sources confirmed. #Atlantis for sale. By dawn, the dam broke." Mira published the full expose, a 12-page report complete with whistleblower statements, leaked internal memos, and scanned agreements between Victor's European Cultural Task Force and a discrete coalition of corporate entities, including a biotech firm, a data mining conglomerate, and one particularly ominous defense contractor known for deep-sea weapon prototypes. The documents were dated 2 weeks before the formation of the so-called Neutral Protection Coalition. One clause read plainly, "All exclusive rights to non-public Atlantean findings shall be transferred to the signatory consortium upon international approval of the custodianship body." Translation: once the UN rubber-stamped Victor's control, the ruins would be privatized, bit by bit, drone by drone, data packet by data packet. The world exploded. News outlets scrambled for comment. The BBC ran a special segment titled, "Who Really Owns Atlantis?" CNN countered with Musk versus Alvanis, culture war or corporate coup. Reddit threads bloomed like coral reefs, dissecting every line of every leaked document. Memes began circulating with Victor's face photoshopped onto treasure maps, wearing a monocle and clutching Atlantean NFTs. But the real impact hit Geneva. In an emergency closed session, several UN officials who had backed Victor's claim rescinded their support. Public trust had evaporated. Cultural historians and archaeologists who had once rallied to his cause began distancing themselves, some out of shame, others out of fear of implication. Victor Alvanis, once hailed as the gatekeeper of lost wisdom, was now portrayed as a curator of secrecy, cloaked in legitimacy, but driven by control. On the EOS 2, Elon watched it all unfold without a trace of glee. He wasn't celebrating. He was planning. In the war room-turned-makeshift classroom, Elon stood before a digital whiteboard scribbled with nodes, arrows, and spiral graphs. A single phrase was highlighted at the top: "Decentralized governance for shared legacy." Lena entered quietly, reading over his shoulder. "You're really going to propose it, aren't you?" He didn't look up. "If not now, when?" She scanned the diagram. It was radical and brilliant. A global cultural protocol that functioned like open-source code. Instead of one entity or nation owning the ruins, the model would create a rotating body of educators, scientists, historians, and indigenous leaders who would oversee data access, research permissions, and archival decisions. All managed through blockchain identity, distributed peer voting, and rotational curation cycles, inspired by the very glyphs they had found beneath the ocean. Atlantis was never a monarchy, Elon said. It was an archive, built by many, shared by all. What if we brought that back, not just as memory, but as method? Jorge peeked in. "You're trending again." "Why this time?" Elon asked without emotion. Jorge showed him the screen. A new headline: "Musk to launch Open Atlantean Protocol, Global Stewardship, No Borders. The article included a pull quote from Elon's last broadcast. "The 8th cycle is ours. Not mine. Not theirs. Ours." Victor, meanwhile, was unraveling. He had tried to deny the documents, claimed forgeries, distortions, out-of-context leaks. But the signatures matched. The timestamps lined up. The press had caught scent of blood, and every hour brought a new blow. In his office aboard the ECCI-1, he stared at a photo on his desk, a younger version of himself standing beside a newly unearthed Minoan tablet in Crete, beaming with excitement. That man was gone. Now the world saw him as a gatekeeper turned grifter, a man who had stood at the door of discovery and tried to sell tickets to the highest bidder. Still, he refused to relinquish the military perimeter. The naval units remained. The drones kept flying. Control was all he had left. Back aboard the EOS-2, Elon went live. It wasn't a grand production. No music, no graphics, just him and the sea. He stood in front of the camera, wind tossing his hoodie, face still. "This is not about me," he began, and it never was. He paused. "For thousands of years, we've assumed history belongs to the victors. But what if it belongs to the survivors? What if Atlantis didn't sink because it failed, but because it realized legacy can't be caged?" He stepped aside, revealing a schematic on screen. The Open Atlantean Protocol is now live. Anyone can access it. Scholars, students, elders, artists. You don't need a grant or a title. Just curiosity. Just integrity. He looked directly into the lens. We don't need another empire. We need a memory that lives in motion. The screen faded to black, then lit again, this time with a rotating double spiral, the new symbol of shared stewardship. The response was overwhelming. Universities from over 30 countries joined the protocol within 48 hours. Indigenous communities proposed cultural resonance councils to guide ethical interpretation. UNESCO issued a cautious but supportive statement. Even rival tech CEOs endorsed the model, if only to avoid being on the wrong side of history. Victor's isolation became complete, and for the first time in weeks, the waters around the spiral grew still. That night, Lena found Elon alone on the bow, eyes to the stars. "You did it," she said softly. He didn't smile. "We did something." She sat beside him. "Victor won't let go. Not entirely." "He doesn't have to," Elon replied. "Let the past cling to its gates. We'll build doorways." She looked at him. "And what if the 8th cycle falls like the rest?" He finally smiled, then let it fall with honesty, with open eyes. That's more than most cycles ever get. Below them, the sea breathed gently, and far beneath the surface, the AI stirred once more, no longer in warning, but in recognition, as if saying, now they understand. The invitations were not emailed. They were transmitted, encoded in spirals, in song, in every language known, and even a few forgotten. Schools received them. Libraries, indigenous councils, scientific collectives, children's choirs, farmers' cooperatives, quantum physicists, storytellers, dancers, monks. Elon Musk didn't want an inauguration. He wanted a celebration, so he called it the Festival of New Atlantis, a gathering of shared minds and future seeds. And the world responded. They came by ship, by sky, by solar gliders and sailboats. From Chile, a team of school teachers carried hand-built microscopes. From Kenya, agronomists brought seeds preserved through generations. A group of Sami children arrived from the Arctic with drums. A string quartet from Mumbai floated in via hydrogen dirigible. A physicist from MIT flew commercial, seated between two monks from Bhutan. And all of them arrived on the ruins, because by now, the spiral tower was not alone. As the tides had continued to shift, more of the Atlantean complex had revealed itself. Columns, arches, marble pathways still partially submerged, but walkable at low tide. Elon's crew, working with local conservationists, had built elegant floating platforms between the ruins to ensure no damage, only reverence. When guests stepped onto the site, They did so barefoot, not as conquerors, but as listeners. Victor tried to stop it. He filed injunctions. He called press conferences. He appealed to UNESCO, The Hague, even tried to stir panic through op-eds claiming the festival was a staged cult ritual designed to undermine global order. But the documents leaked in Chapter 14 had done their damage. Victor no longer had credibility. And as his last legal maneuver reached the European Court of Cultural Arbitration, the ruling came swift and poetic. No civilization, past or present, shall be held hostage by profit. The ruins are not commodities. They are connective tissue between eras. Victor's access was revoked, his perimeter dissolved, his legacy rewritten. And so, as the sun rose over the Ionian Sea on the first day of the festival, a group of Syrian and Greek children placed hand-woven ribbons between the stone columns of Hydropolis while a violinist played a slow, improvisational tune based on the harmonic scale of the Atlantean AI. Jorge filmed everything. The footage streamed to over 400 million people. Lena stood at the main dock, welcoming arriving guests with a journal in hand, asking each person one question. What do you hope Atlantis will teach us? She recorded hundreds of answers. Some were simple, that we can do better. That knowledge belongs to everyone. That past mistakes don't define future joy. That even ruins can sing. Some were poetic, some heartbreaking. One child answered, I hope it teaches the sky how to be kinder. Kaelin curated the answers into a real-time sculpture made of holograms and mirrored glass, hovering in the middle of the amphitheater platform. As participants spoke, their words floated around them, shimmering, translating, orbiting like prayers. Elon said little. He moved through the festival like a guest himself, handing out seed kits, adjusting solar panels, helping a Senegalese engineer install a floating desalination prototype near the reef. A group of high school students from South Korea caught him sitting on the edge of a stone archway eating dried figs and offered him a t-shirt they'd made with a new symbol, the double spiral entwined with the silhouette of a planet. He put it on immediately. As the festival reached its second day, the AI stirred again. This time not in warning, but resonance. Each time a new group played music, a subtle vibration pulsed through the stone. When people read poetry aloud, the orb within the central chamber softly glowed. The Atlantean technology, whatever it was, seemed to respond to harmony, intention, coherence. Elon and Lena dubbed it responsive archaeology. A German sound artist theorized that the AI wasn't an assistant or tool, but a cultural mirror, an archive designed to reflect emotional truth back to those who approached it. And when a group of Navajo elders sang a song about time unfolding like a circle, the orb began to hum in perfect pitch. The final night of the festival was unplanned. No stage, no closing speech. Instead, the guests gathered on the water-level plaza, some on floating mats, others on the gentle stones. Lanterns floated overhead. The sea glowed with bioluminescence. One by one, people rose to share what they'd seen. A Cuban botanist described ancient seeds found in salt-preserved chambers still viable. A Swedish AI researcher admitted the Atlantean system had solved an equation she'd spent 5 years pursuing. A boy from Morocco read a haiku he had written about civilizations made of sound. Then silence, then a sound. The orb sang again, this time not abstractly, this time in response. 3 rising notes, one falling, a brief pause, then a chorus, not of instruments but of people. Spontaneously across languages and styles, people sang, imperfectly, joyfully, like children making sense of stars. Jorge filmed the moment with tears in his eyes. And when Elon looked up at the tower, glowing faintly under moonlight, he didn't see ruins. He saw a beginning. Back in the orbital band, Starlink satellites recorded the entire broadcast from above. And in cities around the world, people gathered in silence at parks and basements on rooftops, watching the festival under open sky. No applause, just unity, like a tide, like memory returning, like Atlantis reborn, not as a place, but as a promise. The festival had ended, but Atlantis had not. Long after the last violin bowed farewell, after the last child's laughter echoed down the marble corridors, and the last ship pulled gently from the dock, the ruins stood bathed in starlight. Quiet, timeless, and in the very heart of it all, beneath the glass dome of the central Atlantean chamber, Elon Musk sat alone. No camera crew, no data analysts, no live feed, just the orb and silence. He sat cross-legged on the stone floor, the ancient pedestal in front of him, the orb faintly pulsing with a rhythm that had long ceased to feel alien. The sky above, visible through the dome's crystalline structure, was stunning. Deep velvet pierced by stars so close it felt like they were breathing. Elon stared upward. The sea mirrored the constellations, turning the world into a loop, stars above, stars below. And somewhere between them, him, the orb stirred. A soft tone, so low it could be mistaken for a thought, vibrated through the floor. Then light, not blinding, not bright, just present. A glow lifted from the orb, curling in slow spirals, drifting upward like smoke that obeyed no gravity. It formed no words. It asked no questions. It simply opened. And Elon, exhausted but alert, watched as images began to coalesce in the dome above, projected not by lens or screen, but by resonance. A massive coastline lit by silver moons. Structures formed from mineral and water, bending with the tide. Humanoid figures tall, symmetrical, serene, walking barefoot across sand that shimmered like crushed stars. They were not aliens. They were not human either. They were prior. Not outside time, but beneath it. Like a civilization buried in the folds of evolution, not erased by disaster, but withdrawn with purpose. The orb vibrated again. A spiral of stars formed, then inverted, then bloomed into a galactic diagram. Elon watched the center pulse, then lines extended outward. Not maps, not routes, cycles. Each spoke a moment of rise, each loop a moment of fall, and in every center, balance. He saw cities that outgrew their skies, forests that swallowed empires, seas that birthed ideas, then reclaimed them, and always the same choice, expansion or integration. Elon blinked, the breath caught in his chest. "Is this thus?" he whispered. The orb did not answer in language. Instead, a shape appeared, a perfect circle, gently tilted, forming the symbol of equilibrium. Then within it, two new symbols, one representing energy, the other continuity. The third, restraint. He frowned. Not suppression, not fear. Balance. That's what Atlantis had been trying to tell them all along. It wasn't about technology. Not really. Not at the core. The AI, the spheres, the harmonics, those were echoes. Tools. Instruments in a symphony composed not of progress, but of harmony. Elon stood slowly, stepping closer to the orb. His reflection appeared in its surface, distorted but not unrecognizable. And then, for the first time, he heard her voice. Not as a tone, not as a hum, but as something deeper, something cellular. It wasn't in his ears. It was inside him. We sang to remember. We withdrew to preserve. You reached for stars, but forgot the soil. There is no ascent, without anchoring, no light, without shadow. The words weren't heard. They were understood. He closed his eyes. Images bloomed behind his lids, the earth as seen from the lunar surface, shimmering like a mother pearl. Children planting trees, satellites blinking in formation, water rising against coastal cities, a man with a mop smiling in sunlight, a tower sinking, then rising again. You are not the end of a line, the voice whispered. You are the beginning of a turning. He fell to his knees, not in submission, but in recognition. They weren't here to unlock alien power. They were here to listen, to realign, to become worthy participants in a rhythm that had started long before humans ever looked to the sky and wondered what waited beyond it. The orb dimmed. The chamber cooled. Above, the stars still burned. Elon remained kneeling for a long time. When he finally stood, The dome above him had changed. Where once it reflected the constellations of Earth's sky, it now glowed with a mirror sky, stars unfamiliar, arcs of light in constellations no telescope had mapped. Maybe a memory, maybe a promise. He whispered to the air, "We don't need to colonize the galaxy. We need to become part of it." At dawn, Lena found him walking barefoot across the ruins. His expression was unreadable. He said nothing at first, just watched the sun rise over the newly peaceful waters. She walked beside him. "You okay?" He nodded slowly. "Yeah." Then added, "I just had the most important conversation of my life." "With who?" "With something older than time." She didn't push, just walked with him until morning fully arrived. Later, he scribbled a single phrase in his notebook and circled it. "We were never meant to conquer the stars. We were meant to remember them." The sinking didn't begin with thunder or tremor. It began with a sigh. On the seventh dawn after the festival of New Atlantis, the tides shifted with strange elegance. The waters lapped gently higher than before, brushing the edges of the marble walkways. The spiraled steps that had welcomed barefoot thinkers from around the world were now laced with foam. Stones that had glistened under the feet of musicians and poets glowed faintly beneath the rising surface. The ocean had come to reclaim its memory, and no one tried to stop it. From the EOS 2, Elon Musk stood silently on the observation deck. The morning was golden and windless, the kind of calm that usually came before revelation. Behind him, the control panel beeped quietly, showing a steady elevation in water level around the spiral tower and adjacent ruins. Nothing violent, just inevitable. Lena appeared beside him, still holding a tablet, though she hadn't checked it for minutes. "It's sinking," she said, barely above a whisper. He nodded. "It was never ours to keep." She turned to look at him. "We could deploy the pumps, reinforce the sea walls. We have the tech." Elon shook his head. "That's not what it wants." At midday, the orb stopped glowing. It didn't fade with warning. It simply paused, as if satisfied. As the chamber flooded slowly, the AI projected one final pulse. A harmonic wave that reached every receiver on board. Not a song, not a phrase, just a tone. So pure, so balanced that it stopped conversation mid-sentence. Elon, Lena, Jorge, Kalen, and the rest of the remaining crew gathered around the central terminal, watching as the orb's base opened like a lotus, revealing something new. A crystal, iridescent, egg-sized, and silently humming, rose gently from the pedestal and floated inches above the surface before coming to rest in Elon's open hand. Kalen ran every scan imaginable. "It's encoded," he said, "but not in binary, not in language. It's a harmonic archive." Lena's eyes widened. It stored everything. Every tone, every glyph, every vision. Jorge whispered, "It's Atlantis, in the form of a song." By nightfall, the dome was half submerged. The crew placed organic markers at the highest towers, knowing they too would vanish soon beneath the surface. Scientists on board debated cataloging every last image, every last coordinate, every ripple of sound. But Elon stopped them. "Let it go," he said. "We took what we were meant to receive. Anything more would be theft." One by one, the systems were powered down. A ceremonial silence fell over the ship. And as the stars returned to their posts above, the last tip of the spiral slipped beneath the horizon. Quietly, beautifully, like a curtain drawing closed on an ancient play whose final act had always been letting go. 3 days later, in a quiet corner of the ship's cabin, Elon sat alone again, just as he had in the dome, holding the crystal in his hands. It was warm, not mechanically, not electronically, but like something alive. It pulsed not with electricity, but with presence. He hadn't slept much since the sinking, and he hadn't said much either. But inside, he carried a stillness that bordered on spiritual. He placed the crystal on the table and stared at it. Slowly, it emitted a faint harmonic pulse, then a second, a pattern. Elon tapped his fingers against the table, instinctively matching the rhythm. The crystal responded. A beam of soft light projected upward, not in shapes this time, but in motion. Waves undulating in perfect mathematical elegance. One wave curled forward, another mirrored it in reverse. Then the two crossed. Where they met, a point blinked. Then two more blinked beside it. A triangle, a location. Before Elon could trace it further, a soft chime echoed from his tablet nearby. He turned. A new message. No sender, no subject, just a single sentence. You found the first. Now find the second. He blinked. There was no IP source, no server path. It hadn't come through Starlink, nor any known comms relay. Jorge hadn't sent it. Lena didn't know. Kalen cross-referenced it and found nothing in logs. It had simply appeared, like the crystal, like the voice, like the stars touching the sea. Elon looked back out at the ocean. The surface was calm again, the ruins gone, as if they'd never emerged. He picked up the crystal and slid it into a small pouch he wore under his coat. Then he stood, turned off the cabin light, and walked toward the bow. He stood there until morning, watching the horizon. He smiled, not out of satisfaction or triumph, but because he understood something now. Atlantis was not a myth, nor a message. It was a threshold, and there was another waiting. Now it's your turn. Tell us, from which city are you watching this story? And if you were Elon for a day, would you follow the coordinates to find the second? Drop your thoughts below. We're reading every single one.